what just happened. Those last minute calls, Maureen saying, Maureen, can you sing blah, blah, blah? I think that time might be ending. There's no, so you try to do trying to sing her song today. She wrote a song a few years ago called Finding Purpose in a World on Fire. Finding Purpose in a World on Fire. And goes something like that. Don't listen to the thing, just catch the words. It's hard to hear the news today. It's hard to see the painful way our stinking thinking feeds only the self, the me and my, the us and them, continuing the suffering. What can I do to ease this living hell? Finding purpose in a world on fire, as far as I can see. Trying not to add my kindling or emotional gasoline. Surrounded in this smoky light, I can barely breathe, but by deconstructing self, we are free. It goes on to say, I can't fix the way things are, and I can't heal the painful scars, snuff out the blazing flame of fear and greed. Attachment to my own fixed views, my separate self, always bad news, while wisdom says love is what we need. The ash that's left by all of this humiliation, disgust, offense, abiding in no thingness I can see, in embracing happiness and joy, singing out a joyful noise, gently holding space for all to be. Finding purpose in a world on fire, as far as I can see. Trying not to add my kindling or emotional gasoline. Surrounded in this smoky light, I can barely breathe. But by deconstructing self, we are free. We are free. This is a wonderful song. I think it's a very timely song. I thought it was timely when she wrote it 4 years ago, and then 3 years ago, and then 2 years ago, last year, this year, and I have a good inkling next year. Because we have to really, really get it. You know, we have to really get it. The Buddha Dharma is not the study of Buddhism. It's the cultivating of ourselves to live in accord with the law, the natural law of cause and effect. And so, you know, our cultivation is to first to recognize and then uproot our negative intentions. And so we've been on a practice for a while now, and just noticing that without condemnation, without a big conversation about it. You know, the Buddha has I forget the number of the sutta, but plenty of people can find it for me before the end of the talk. And it's called, he said, two kinds of thought. And he said, you can like just boil everything down to one side or the other side, whether it's worth thinking about. You found it already? Oh,
63.
he's good.
But it also helps marketing.
See, you can tell the ones that we home in on. You know, I mean, you can just plop the book down, the page open, because there are few. We don't need we don't need the 84,000 different teachings. You know, that's so that everybody can find something or some things that they can use to help them at whatever their poison is, whatever, you know, they're stumbled by, whatever they're confused by, whatever's rising up in their life that's destroying their peace or that's causing them to not act in the way that they want to act or to not offer to the world the goodness that's in them. There's some obstacle, there's some hindrance, some stumbling block. And so you have to kind of like fish out if you don't know what it is. You just keep reading and you start to get an idea. You know, something starts to rise up in you that doesn't feel so good. Like look, you might want to look right there. You know, oh no, that doesn't go for me. I need to be looking over here. You know, you might want to look right there. You know, because we don't know. If we don't know, then we can't fully trust our solution for it. I wouldn't dare go into a pharmacy and start rattling around the shelves and pulling out, you know, I was going to say chemicals, I mean medicine, pulling out medicine and taking it because I don't know it. I haven't been trained in it. I don't know what's good for it. I don't know the side effects. I don't know the interaction. I don't know. So I have to, if I'm sick and I can't get well, I have to trust somebody to begin to point me in a direction where I can look. And so this is all that the Buddha suggests that we do. We find ones that we consider wise and we listen to what they have to say. And we don't only listen, but we listen first. Without the judging mind, the yeah, but mind. That's the hardest part. The hard part is not listening. It's like cutting off the listening too soon because what we already know starts to rise up, or what, for goodness sake, feels uncomfortable starts to rise up, or for what, because of memory attaching to some other similar thought or a word that triggered me when I was 6, and to hear that word is triggering me still today. You know, these kinds of things, these obstacles come up for us and are in our way. And so our real work is not contending with the world, it's contending with ourselves. And if we spend enough time doing that, we would actually be all right with the world because we'd understand it. We'd understand the world because we understand ourselves. So we understand when someone makes a mistake. We understand when someone is trying to repair a breach. We understand when there's no way to do a thing. We understand how something turned out because we understand causality. And as we just start trying to understand ourselves, lo and behold, we also start to understand everything that's out there. And then we start to see that it is all connected. Someone said, when this is, this is. When this isn't, this is. So he gave a sutta, that's the sutta number 1 in the Majjhima Nikaya, and that's the only sutta in the whole book that at the end, at the last line, it says, and the bhikkhus heard and they were not delighted in what he said. But if they had been delighted in what he said, there would have been no need for all the other teachings. But because when he gave them the absolute truth, they couldn't understand it. It's like explaining to a 6-year-old where babies come from. But now if I gave a 16-year-old girl the talk I give the 6-year-old, then she's liable to be in trouble. Yeah. So it's the right teaching at the right time for the right individuals with the right intention and purpose in mind. Articulated in a certain way. Sometimes partial, because partial is just enough to help a person take the next step and not go retro. Sometimes in full, because, the Buddha would look and he'd say sometimes he could see that a person was ready and he could go the whole way. And so he would give them more of a teaching than he gave the general part. Or sometimes he gave an intricate teaching just to show them that they did not understand. Because sometimes we can think we understand, and then we're like closed off because this I know, and we're closed off. But if we, become there's a freshness in wanting to know more. There is a freshness in opening up when one doesn't feel challenged, when one is not afraid. So we have to look at what prevents us from going further. Is it fear? Are we stuck in some kind of past neurosis? And yes, that did happen, but it's not happening now. Are we using our past to predict the future? Well, I already did that, or I already gave them a chance, or I already tried that, or I already forgave somebody in this same situation, and this was the outcome. So that means it's going to always be the outcome in every situation with every person. We think some really irrational thoughts, and we think of really, really sane thoughts. We think some really, really obtuse thoughts that if we even sat back and thought about it for a few minutes, we would change our view. But we're so quick to have that knee-jerk reaction. I'm sorry. Is that disturbing? Whoever that is, I have no idea. She's telling them we have a Dharma and they probably go to some other part and go or whatever. Thank you. I'm sorry. We don't generally have service workers on Sunday, but because it's raining for the last week and a half, we have to get at the I'm happy that they show up on Sunday. But like I said, they could go on that side of the property. I was listening to a preacher the other day, and now some of us went places where we sang, oh, all these nice songs, and we had a lot of, if you can, you can bring your chair really up close, and it'll be okay. And they have a lot of holy singing, and people just feel so good, and but I actually didn't come up in that kind of church, I guess you can tell. So I came up in Pentecostal church and charismatic denominations mostly. There was some Baptist, and it seems that every denomination has its strong point and its weak point, right? Like the Baptist, at least where I came from, they were known for hospitality. So we had meals every Sunday. I mean, a big church too. Well, not like the mega churches today, but 500 or 600 people. And those mothers would come in there and cook every Sunday. I didn't, but they would cook every Sunday. And they feed everybody, And there wasn't one time that a congregation member was sick or at home or in the hospital, that the pastor or the deacons didn't go and visit them. And some had long-term sicknesses. They didn't get tired after 3 or 4 visits. They visited them until they died. But given the hospitality, we greet people at the door, happy to see them. That's not really like what we do in the Dharma. I don't know why, because this is a Dharma that talks about compassion, it talks about kindness, and it talks about forgetting about oneself and tending to the others. But I don't know, it sort of seems like it goes there for us. And that's a shame. Because we won't start to get some of this until we get some of that. We really won't. I'm so grateful for the Christian churches around here and how they, feed and support and pack all of those lunches and deliver all those meals and all those things, because I don't think we've ever been able to get volunteers here to do too much of that. No, we busy getting enlightened or something. But it's just something to think about. I mean, the Buddha taught by precept and example. He gave wonderful, wonderful teachings. But he walked until he dropped. That's what I can say. That he gave his whole life to walking out the teaching, being an exemplar of the teaching, embodying the teaching. And one could just ask oneself, am I doing that? And if no, then you can start. You can start with something. You don't have to go for the big job. You don't have to despise small beginnings. You don't even have to despise staying with small things. Just saying do something. That your walk equals your talk. And if you say, well, I don't talk about it, start talking. If you start talking, a lot of times I'll say something, I'm like, oh my goodness, like, why did I say that? Because I know, now an action is required of me, because you got to practice what you preach, and that's what has helped me to step forward, to arouse more energy, to serve others, to be there for others, to put aside what I want to do and do what somebody else wants to do. That's even a gift. So if we're one that, things always have to be our way, he says, why should I do the things I want to do? Why not do what my good friends in the Dharma want to do? Sometimes it's a sacrifice like that. Sometimes we have a lot of chatter around the little things that we do so that we won't be asked to do a bigger thing. Sometimes we see something to do, but we're hoping somebody else steps up and does it. Yeah. He says, notice these kinds of words, because those are the little foxes that spoil the vine. So this preacher was talking yesterday, and he was saying, that his name is Darius Daniels. I want to give him his props because he gave himself his props at the beginning of his talk. So I want to make sure I don't offend him. He said, I don't need to give anybody else a sermon. He said, because I always have a sermon in me. That's how he started. He said, so what you're going to hear today, you're hearing for the first time. That's what he said. And he talked about the 5 types of people that you can't help. And he said, the first type is a person who's not open. Because even though you may want to help them, even though you may want to give them something, even though you may want to open a door for them, even though you want to make a way for them, there's something that they have to offer. So it's not just about giving, but giving is also coupled with what?
Receiving.
Yeah, with receiving. So there has to be the giver and the receiver. There has to be the intention to give, the intention to receive. He said the second type is the person who doesn't want it. You can't give somebody something that they don't want. The third type is the person who wants it, but they just don't want it yet. It's like, yeah, I know I should be doing that, or I need to do that. I'm going to start, but not today. The fourth type is the person who wants it, but they don't want it from you. You ever give somebody advice? I mean, you've talked until you blue in the face. I mean, you've given it 1,000 times. I'm exaggerating. And then they come rushing home one day and say, guess what? So-and-so said da 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 da. Like you looking for a frying pan. like you talked until you all talked out like they didn't hear and want it, but they don't want it from you. And the fifth kind is the one who's not willing to do what it takes. They want it, but not willing to do what it takes. And so I'd like to talk about that fifth one today, wanting something, but not willing to do what it takes. And so all the teachers tell us that there's a way leading out of our suffering, but we have to tread that path. We have to walk that way. And if we don't, we're going to end up somewhere, but we might not end up where we were trying to go because it's difficult for us to do the things that we don't want to do. It's difficult for us to accomplish if we're not willing to do what it takes. And some of us think that by so much of our reading, so much of our unpacking and understanding, the Dharma, that we will have the mind of a Buddha. But the Buddha said you don't get it that way. You have to actually tread the path. To tread the path, you have to know what is path. And you have to walk that path, and you have to cultivate yourself on a daily basis to stay on the path. Because the rain comes and it washes out the road. And we find ourselves floating over there somewhere. We have to bring ourselves back. And that can be a hard thing to do unless we want it bad enough. The things that we want bad enough, we'll go through a lot to get. And so there comes a time when we're no longer talking to the 6-year-old, but the 16-year-old. And the baby talk that we listen to, and also the talk we gave ourselves, starts to become insufficient. We plateau. We can't grow. We start thinking, well, that was good. Now what's next? In order then to go deeper into the truth of things, into the nature of reality, we have to really discover our own conscience. We have to really, really know ourselves. We have to not be afraid to know, not be afraid to see. There's a little boy who's an internet sensation, and he's just saying, open the eyes of my heart, Lord. I want to see. And he says, I want to see you. But the Buddha says, we need to see ourselves. And he says, don't be afraid, because that's actually the way out. That is the way out. We think we're safe when we know everybody else. No, we're safe when we know ourselves. I'll say we're safer. There's some things we have to do with ourselves. We're safer when we know our own mind. And so we have to investigate and listen to those we consider wise and put in step number 2 their propositions into practice. That means we have to try them out, not just think about them and think, oh, I think that's a good idea, and I don't think that's a good idea. But he said, put them to the test. Put them to the test. Not testing others, but testing ourselves. I tell you, you'll never get bored. You'll never get bored with yourself. And if you're really doing it, putting the Dharma to the test, not putting yourself to the test, but putting the Dharma to the test, then every day will be a day of discovery. When one realizes that we can be better. Realizes that the things that I fear come upon me. We will realize that there is nothing that this life brings that we can't handle. And then we'll start to live in a different way. I mean, there will be joy every morning. The minute some sense of suffering rises up, we know how to lift a standard against it. Doesn't mean that we don't go through things. Doesn't mean that we don't suffer loss. Doesn't mean, that there won't be, I was going to say trials, but there won't be the unpleasant fruit or rotting fruit hanging on the vine. Sometimes there is. But we still won't suffer because we understand when this is, and this isn't, this is. And we'll start organizing our lives in a certain way. That what we want to be there, that's good, that's wholesome, that's useful, that's bright, we will know how to implement. We will know how to do these things. Now, sometimes it means you have to change your address. The places you used to go, you don't go. The people you used to hang with, you don't hang with them. Not because you're judging them, but simply because that neighborhood is not conducive to peace and harmony. That gets back to the kind of people who want something, they just don't want it right now because what they would have to do to get it is more than they're willing to do. And the danger in being with people like that, unless you're absolutely able to make some inroads to move them to a higher path. The danger is when you're in the room with a rotting, stinking body, it's going to get all in you. It's going to get all in your clothes. You get the smell in your nose. You go outside, take a deep breath of air, you can still smell the rot. But sometimes it's not us, but it's the company that we keep. It's the dribble that we listen to and begin to internalize. We can be doing everything right, everything good, everything in a wholesome way. But we just have this probably a little bit too attached to that one, and those are the things that they do. So the one who's wise heeds that warning. But sometimes you have to clean up your environment. If you can't clean up your environment and you have to live there, you have to work doubly hard on yourself that you don't become infected. We had somebody visit Hartwood, and she wasn't here but 2 days before she started infecting everybody. If she go whisper something here, go say, I don't understand this over here, but really just spewing her dissatisfaction. I didn't hear about it until like 5 or 6 days, but I'm told it started on day number 1. I mean, like, what are you looking for? Why are you here? I just asked her point blank, what is it that you're after? I said, because it's not the Dharma. So what is it? What's the real reason that you're here? And I did find out the real reason that she was here. And it wasn't a good reason. In her mind, it was a good reason. You know, she thought that she was doing something that would be good to do, but she just had the wrong understanding. Actually, she had a good understanding too, just too much suffering, that's all. So we can be doing the right things, but not for the right reason. And that taints it, changes it. The Buddha said the intention is everything. So sometimes we have to like go deep and check out what is our intention in doing something, or in saying something, or in being somewhere. What is our true intention? And if we don't know, we're liable to say anything. But this kind of practice, people are always asking me, what is cultivation? I'm still confused about what it is. It's just continually examining. Without judgment, just looking and seeing. What is your intention? That thing you did just now. That thing you're getting ready to do right now. That thing you did yesterday. What was your intention? How well did you carry it out? Did you see how you could improve and do it better? Was it effective? If not, then maybe we shouldn't do that one that way again. We can try something else. Nothing beats a failure but a try. And after a while, you'll get so clever, but I mean in a good way. That when you see something arising, you know what that is. Because it finds nothing in you. Something someone says, a bit of dissatisfaction, or a bit of happiness. It's not really their happiness. It's that finds something. It has a place in you. So really your happiness for others is generally around what would make you happy. You know? Of course, now if your happiness is seeing them happy at whatever they want, same kind of attachment. We start to see how much we're attached to. And as we start letting go, just when we see, I catch and release. When I stopped fishing and keeping them, because I was a Buddhist, and on your deeper say, like, you might want to think about giving up fishing. And then I just started catching and releasing. But then I read somewhere that when you handle fish, you give them a disease, because they don't have an immunity against us. And that they generally die if you handle them, even when you catch and release. And I was thinking, well, that's not good. Then I started thinking, that's why I know people can change from not good to good. Because I haven't you in many, many, many ways. I have. So then I started thinking, we would catch blowfish sometimes, and they are real scaly, unattractive looking fish. But once you hook them, it's extremely difficult to get the hook out to throw them back. You know, and they have big teeth, big sharp teeth like this. They're not like, you know, fish that some of us eat. But these, you don't eat them. And they're grotesque and they have really sharp teeth. So when you caught them, you had to bang them to get them a little woo-woo so you could get your hook out and throw them back. And I started thinking, suppose I was that fish. And I was being hooked, tearing the, I don't know what you call it, the cartilage or whatever in my, and little by little, the compassion arose. And then the abandonment. And so I'm saying that to say if there's something that you do, some habit that you have, some way of thinking, you already figured out that it's not wholesome or it's not the best way to think or feel. It's not right. It's just not right. Just by continually reviewing it in one's mind, changes or shifts one's thinking about it. And you'll find little by little, you can abandon that which is unwholesome. You can use that same technique on someone that you really have difficulty being with. Good person, but you know, thinking what is a way that I can gradually, I know I shouldn't be that way, but then don't. But just little by little, thinking, what if you were that person? Looking and feeling in to the need of the person that makes them act in that way. I remember I say Joe gave the Dharma talk because he was having some issue, you know, just adjusting to someone else's behaviors. And then he said, what if I stop looking at them and wishing that they would change? Suppose I changed in my way of dealing with them, in my way of relating with them. Suppose I changed the way I saw them. And he said, oh, I'm so much happier now. He said, I see something I didn't see before. I see some beauty there that I did not see before. Didn't mean the person had made a change at all. Or maybe the person changed because you changed. What if I step up to the plate? I'm the one who will be responsible for bringing about the change we all want to see. Oh, how could I do that? And then we think of something, oh, but that's too hard. That's not how I am. That's just not me. That's just not the way I am. But instead of saying that, suppose I said, I can change. And then when one gets this in their mind enough, one does change. And when one changes, one develops confidence in the path that they're on because they can see that they're actually on a path. They're not like free form or, you know, they can see that they're actually on a path that leads somewhere. And after a while, it's kind of like the opening of the Dharma eye. Everywhere you look, all you see is Dharma. Everything could be a Dharma talk. Everything, it's everywhere. I mean, it's all there is. One definition for Dharma is phenomena, things. It's everything. But the Buddha Dharma is a little bit different than seeing everything with ordinary eyes. It is seeing everything without any hindrance or obstacle. Seeing the pure nature of everything. Awakening to everything. Hearing and seeing in the end, everything is essentially empty. We color it. So how could I change something in my life? That, the thing I always talk about, the red dye number 2, right? I mean, I've talked about that so much, everybody knows that story. But it only worked on red dye number 2. If you bought green Kool-Aid, you were out of luck with the renews. It had to be red dye, it had to be the red Kool-Aid. Because whatever, it was neutralizing whatever created that color, So we tell them, make sure you get red dye, number 2. Look on the package, or you'll have a failed experiment in front of everybody. Some of you listening may not know what I'm talking about. Don't worry about it. You'll hear that story another time. So it's in this way that we start to know ourselves, And we do that by listening to those we think are wise, then investigating the truth of that for ourselves, putting it into practice. Not everything. Just go for the thing that besets you. What is that? We talk about faking it until we make it. And I can go along with that to a point, But it's not so much faking it, but putting forth the effort to see something a different way, to hold it a different way, to be with it for 5 minutes longer, just gradually extending the time that we can offer, to improving our situation, to improving the situation of another. And after a while, that will be our go-to place all the time. In the beginning, you may have the knee-jerk reaction, but 30 seconds later, you're on to the solution. So maybe your mind doesn't just flip like that, but it wavers. Is this worth being upset over? I mean, really, is it? And if it is, what part of you is the holdout? My ego, I want to be right. I want to lead. I want to be in charge. We've always done it this way, and I'm comfortable with that. Why do something different? Whatever it is for you, that is the obstacle. And you start to see that it's not an obstacle at all. It's just a ditty in your own mind that you could change, you could let go of anytime you really wanted to. And just try. You'll become happy with yourself. And that's good, but don't become too happy with yourself. Or you find yourself in the same stage. The Buddha said, when, the negative things going on in my mind, and my mind's agitated. He said, but when there's a lot of good thoughts and happiness and positivity going on in the mind, the mind is still agitated. You learn how to not be too happy, not be too sad. Then you find yourself right there in that middle way, where it's not this and it's not that. Where it is this and it is also that. No more leaning, no more falling off. That kind of middle way. And then you create the day you want, because your mind is cheap. Whatever you think upon, that becomes the inclination. How wonderful to know that my happiness is not dependent on you. Wouldn't that be wonderful for you to know that your happiness is not dependent upon anyone else? And say, like that right there, that's a freedom right there. To know that I rule my mind. And this is all about learning how to do that. I was talking with someone yesterday, and she was, or day before yesterday, she was like really in a tizzy because something was happening and she was like so discouraged. And I said, you don't have to be discouraged. That's your house. You can fix that. I said, but you do have to fix it. I said, if they're acting like that, that's not their fault. That has to do with your training. There's no way that somebody's going to tell me, like my children, are going to just like do whatever they want to do in my house. Act in all kinds of ways. Treat me with all kinds of disrespect. You may disrespect me, but you won't do it in my house. And today is not to talk on tolerating a slight and overlooking a fault. It's about training. So he said, breathing in and breathing out. We train. Go back and read. I don't know what you're doing in your meditation. But he said, breathing in and breathing out. We train. As you begin to train yourself. Discipline yourself. I don't want anybody else to discipline you. But as we begin to discipline ourselves, we find ourselves increasingly filled with, he said, a pleasure that's not born of this world. The Bible said the world didn't give it, so the world can't take it from us. That's the inheritance of one who practices well. Be a good practitioner. And one day, you get to play in the real game. When the scout comes by through, the scout comes, he's looking for the best player, right? Not just an also ran, not just somebody who's putting in the time they're out there, but, they're not giving it all of their effort, not doing it with their whole heart. Just sort of out there. He's not looking for the water boy. He's not is looking for the one who believes in himself, who gives his all to the game, who understands his purpose for being on the field, who is not only well trained, but well disciplined. The one who has a mind of contentment. You don't have to like call him 5 times to get to practice. The one who does actually practice, besides when he's at practice. All of these things, you can take things from your natural understanding of life and apply it to this path. And all the answers are right there. Yeah, we talk about esoteric and exoteric, and we talk about all of this kind of, but we can like keep it really simple. And we'll be happy. It will start to be so seamless with your life that you don't even have to talk about it. You don't even have to try to do something. You don't even have to build a religiosity around it. You're just walking through the world harmless, yet helpful. After a while, you might start thinking, well, there's nothing to do, nowhere to go, nothing to do. And that's true when you've done what needs to be done. Your day gets, you become available to the day, to what comes up in the day. You start to get good ideas of how to be helpful to somebody, even how to be helpful to yourself. And then there's just living in the world. We had an ordination for those of you who didn't know or didn't hear that Sada took her Upasampada, higher Bhikkhuni ordination. And someone sent me an email. An email, let's see. There was some question about the Bhikkhunis who participated in the ceremony as to whether they were Theravada or Mahayana. But we know that they've all had the Theravada ordination, so it was a Theravada Bhikkhuni platform. But you might want to consider then why it's important for everybody to wear the same robe. And I said, I actually thought they looked beautiful. Now, at that time, we all did have on the same robe. But they know that here we wear different robes, and we wear different lineage robes and so forth. And they said it might be good for you to keep consistency so there'll be no question. No. And I responded back, well, since they didn't have Theravada or Mahayana in the Buddhist day, I don't know what to say about that. Maybe we should focus on the things that are important and set aside the ways that we label, identify, and separate ourselves. This is supposed to be, a higher training, a sublime teaching. We're fiddle-faddling, with such thoughts. And I just left it like that. So let us take the high road. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm pensive today, so I'm talking really soft. I apologize. Um, I'm cruising today. No. Just here because of cause and condition. Nothing in particular, that I'm yearning for. Yeah, I could say it's another day in samsara. But one day I'll step out of samsara. Yeah. When I can no longer find samsara in my mind, then I'll be free. Right here. That's a state, I'd say a state of consciousness, but you think about ordinary human consciousness. Don't think in that way. The Buddha said it's something else. So thank you for coming today. I hope you have a peaceful and happy week. You can make that so all by yourself, in spite of all the craziness that's going on in the world. And if we, as Maureen said, what was the song? Try not to add your kindling or emotional gasoline by deconstructing self. We are free. We are free. Abiding in nothing, just embracing happiness and joy, singing with a joyful noise, gently holding space